Good morning and afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give everyone a few moments to come in. And while you're coming on, if you can, please share what organization you're with and what city and state you're watching our webinar from. We're going to get started in about 1 minute to give more people time to get logged in and comfortable. All right, thank you again, everyone, for watching. And we welcome you to the Leaders in Housing Counseling webinar. This is our first webinar for 2023. And so we say to you all, Happy New Year. Welcome to a new year with new challenges, new growth, and new opportunities. Today is January 12th, 2023, and we're going to go ahead and get started for today. Where's my mouse? Okay, here we go. All right, just a few things we want to go over before we get started for today. Again, we'd love to know where you are watching from and what organization you are affiliated with. So if you can, please put that information in the chat box. And so I just want to acknowledge a few. So we see Beverly Carlton with Olive Hill, CEDC in Morgantown, North Carolina. We see Kristen Lucas, Piedmont Housing Alliance in Charlottesville, Virginia. Who else do we see here? We see John Watkins with Blair Edison Neighborhoods Incorporated. We see Meredith McAllister from Home Partnership Incorporated in Hartford County, Maryland. And we see Rebecca Richardson with Northwest Regional Housing Authority in Harrison, Arkansas. We thank you all for watching our webinar today. This webinar is being recorded. And so if there's any part of this webinar that you missed today, you can watch the recording that will be listed on our YouTube channel and on our website. Today's PowerPoint presentation will be added to the chat box. So if you want to follow along with us with the presentation, you can just click on the link and you'll be able to follow along. Closed captioning has been enabled for this webinar. If you need to use this feature, if you toggle your mouse at the bottom of the screen and click the CC button, you'll be able to have that option enabled. There will be a portion at the end of this presentation where we will ask and have answered all of the questions that you may have on today. We do ask that if you have a question, you add that question to the Q&A box and not the chat box. Our chat box is constantly rolling and we don't want to miss any of your questions. So again, if you have any questions today, please add them to the Q&A box and not the chat box. I think that's all for me today. So I'm going to hand this portion over to Bruce Dorr-Palin, our Executive Director, and he will take over from here. Enjoy the webinar, everyone. Oh, no, I do have more things. I'm sorry. If you can, please follow us on our social media channels. They're all listed here. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And again, all of our Leaders in Housing Counseling webinars are listed on our YouTube channel and on our website. So if you miss anything, or if you want to go back and view any of our webinars, you can do so by going on YouTube or our website. Please join NHRC. We do have significant discounts for NHRC members for tri-merged credit reports with CoreLogic Credco. And I believe Bruce will be going over more of those discounts at the end of this presentation. So if you want to learn more about how you can join NHRC or to obtain the Credco CoreLogic discount on tri-merged credit reports, please hang on till the end of this webinar and you'll receive that information. So that's it for me really this time, everyone. So I'm going to turn this portion over to Bruce.
Well, thank you, Ebony. And let me just add on the membership part that we have learned that a few of the member organizations aren't taking advantage of the discount. So please, if you're a member and you're not already getting the credit reports, I know credit reports are going up substantially this year. And so we have, a very good deal for you if you're not using it currently and need to. So anyways, welcome to our webinar. We're going to do a quick set of updates. I'll talk a little bit about our upcoming conference, our national conference that we have scheduled. Christy's going to give us the latest in what's happening on Congress. Ellie will give us her updates, but really the bulk of this call will be about the AmeriCorps application and this very innovative program that Housing Action Illinois is doing that will help organizations increase their staffing levels and bring some talent into the organization. And we hope some of these people will become full-time housing counselors after the year-long program. So, I mean, there's a lot of very good things in here. They have moved the application process to make it a national one. We understand that the AmeriCorps people are very excited about this opportunity. It's, I think, many, many pluses for the work that we're doing. So that'll be the bulk of our presentations. And of course, please, any thoughts or questions you've got, put them in the Q&A so that we can respond at the appropriate time. And we'll make a quick plug at the end about joining NHRC. And we have a couple important webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks that will hit on important subjects of our work as well. But glad to have you today. Let's start on my topic, which is we are doing our national conference. This it's Monday and Tuesday, March 27th and 28th. We'll be in Washington, D.C., and we will have, I think, a very good program. It's going to be, when we do these, what we're really trying to do is move the dial forward. We want to give you some opportunities to be with your peers. We want you to be engaged with policymakers. We want to be able to bring in some people who may be helpful in Congress or in the administration. We've already gotten some real interest at HUD, and we will, and there'll be more to come in terms of what those details look like. We've also paired this with the NCRC conference, which is the 29th and 30th. And the idea would be that you could save on travel if you're going to DC and you have to travel a distance. So that makes it easier for some people to attend. And we are, and we've got the pricing schedule there. And we may have, and so please, we're actually not quite ready to take registrations, but we will hopefully have that all up and running by next week. You'll start seeing it on the Leaders Conference Board and other places. You know, this will be a great opportunity. And if any of you have ever been to one before, you know, they're really great opportunities to really think about the work, be with people who are doing the work with you, get to hear some fresh perspectives and hear kind of what the cutting edge issues are as we see them, and hopefully help develop them. And, you know, a lot of work we do has sprung from some of these conferences. So the biggest highlight, I think David Young has often mentioned, is this whole work around trying to mainstream housing counseling into the MISMO and electronic data world so that you don't have to rekey information, that it easily transfers in with other programs that exist out there. And this has really taken a life of its own. And I believe he might still be at the MISMO conference today, but they are really doing, I mean, it's really these conferences are an opportunity to really think through and help advance our work. So more to come on that, but let's move on. So Christy, do you want to give us the latest on what's happening in Congress?
Hi, everyone, and welcome back again. So last month on December 23rd, Congress and the President signed the FY 2023 budget into law. Overall, it was a $1.7 trillion spending package. Even though the package provides HUD with $8 billion more for programs over FY22. Unfortunately, HUD's housing counseling program received flatline funding at $57.5 million. Overall, the House and Senate proposals had proposed an increase for the program, but there was no Republican office input until the negotiations started for top line agreements. And ultimately, with a short timeline, appropriators had to make tough decisions. And unfortunately, that happened with the flatline funding, but overall, we will continue to focus on engaging with offices, especially now that the Republicans have the majority over the House. We're working to build stronger ties with offices to ensure that they know that there's research behind the program for effectiveness and to garner more support in the next fiscal year cycle. So overall, the bill actually expanded rental assistance vouchers to an additional 12,000 households. So that's good news. And ultimately, other programs that received increases in funding included the Homeless Assistant Grant program, Native American housing block grants, housing for persons with AIDS, and other programs were included as well. So like I said, we'll keep weighing in with new appropriators. They were recently assigned yesterday, and next week we will actually be having two meetings. One of the meetings is with a House representative that represents Jacksonville, Florida. So if you work in Jacksonville, Florida, around that area, Florida 7 House District, please message me if you're interested in advocating with us for funding as well as disaster recovery funding. And we'll also have a meeting with a House representative from Oklahoma that represents the Oklahoma City area. If you work there, again, please message me. We'd love to engage as many housing counselors as we can in these meetings. Offices love to hear directly from constituents, and they love hearing the trends that are happening locally. So you play a very big part in this. I also want to mention that I'm currently working on a request for information for HUD's Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery rules, waivers, and alternative requirements. So HUD is seeking input to strengthen and improve these requirements for entities receiving or implementing the CDBG DR funding. If you have experience with this program, I'm looking for testimonial stories for organizations that are willing to share this experience. It'd be really helpful. We're working with the National Low Income Housing Coalition, on this, and comments are due February 21st. So again, please insert your email if you'd like to be involved with that as well. So that is all on my end. I will pass it over to Ellie. Thank you all again for joining.
Thanks, Christy. And Happy New Year, everybody. Glad to see you all back for the new year. Just a couple of things very quickly before we dive into the meat of our presentation today. There is an updated servicer escalation list on our website, so make sure that you click in there to check it out. We have the updates are some new contacts at Citizens. We've added Rocket Mortgage and a contact for them. And then for Fay servicing, there is not an escalation option, but there is at least an 800 number that you can call and connect with. So be sure to check out our updated servicer escalation list. Again, that's right on our website. And then we never want to forget to remind you about our job board. If you're a housing counseling organization that has an open position, please go to this link to add your open positions, and also be sure to look at our resumes. I think we are at about 50 resumes on the website. And so if you're looking for somebody, you can also check out the resumes to see if there's anybody there that might fit your needs. And with that, I want to move right into the meat of our presentation today and give Willie Heinecke as much time as possible to go over this and go through this, because he's going to really talk directly today about filling out the application. So, back in December, we talked about some of the basics of the AmeriCorps program that Housing Action Illinois is putting out there. And today, this is really to go through the application and give you kind of an idea of what to be thinking about and what to look for. Now, one of the things I want to be very clear to say is that Willie this is not meant to be the end all be all way for you to learn about how to complete this application. Willie and the Housing Action Illinois team are going to be providing all sorts of technical assistance and helping all along the way. And they're going to be there with you every step of the way. This is really just to kind of give you a really broad overview of what the process is and what to expect and what to be prepared for. And with that, I'm just going to hand it right over to Willie.
Thanks, Ellie. Everyone can see my screen, yeah? That's the PowerPoint.
Yes. Yep, you're good.
Cool. So hello, everyone. As I understand it, there are people that weren't on the December webinar and this webinar, so I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Willie Heinecke. I use he, him pronouns. I'm employed at Housing Action Illinois with the title National Service Program Manager, and I'm elated to be here with you all today. Just a little bit about me. I've actually served 3 terms of AmeriCorps Vista service in my career, and upon completion of my last term of service as an AmeriCorps leader at Housing Action Illinois, I was offered full-time employment at the organization. And over the years, I've been working hard and getting promotions, and here I am today with you all as the National Service Program Manager, doing this webinar about trying to launch our AmeriCorps program to the national level. So just a few quick things on the agenda, right? So I'm going to give the briefest program overview of Housing Action Illinois' AmeriCorps network. Then I'm going to go into the application itself. I'm going to switch from slide to the application, from slide to the application, so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. That third point is going to be the key processes overview. And that's what Ellie was just mentioning about how I will be giving you a broad overview of the important processes for this program to get you from right now till about 12, 18 months down the road when you've hosted your first AmeriCorps positions and they've turned out wonderfully, and now they're housing counseling certified employees at your organization. And of course, we'll have a Q&A at the end. Reminders that this is being recorded. The PowerPoint will be sent out. You can, there's a Q&A at the end. You can ask away. We'll be monitoring the chat. And then the applications are available right now. So if you like what you hear on this, you can email me at the end and I will send you the applications as quickly as I can. So with that, let's talk about the program overview. So first things first, here is a rudimentary programmatic chart of how we here at Housing Action Illinois view the program structure. So the national headquarters of AmeriCorps is in DC, like most national headquarters of federal agencies. Then they have regional offices similar to how HUD runs things, but there's, of course, different regions and different states and in all the regions, but we directly work with the Midwest regional office staff. And then you can see on the bottom where housing action staff, hosting organizations like yourself, the site supervisors, which would be the staff members like yourselves that are on this webinar right now, AmeriCorps leaders, and then the AmeriCorps members and summer associates. The key thing I want to point out with this is that Housing Action Illinois believes that we're all on the same level, right? Sometimes there's this misconception of hierarchy in our program. And even some organizations tend to think we're their funder. Not your funder. We are an organization that has an intermediary program. We are doing this together, right? I do a lot of busy work, admin work, paperwork, so that I can liaise with the federal agency so that you don't have to, right? So we lead from the center. We don't view ourselves as above you or below you. We're all on the same level and we're doing this together. So,
Willie, can I interrupt you for just a moment?
please.
We've gotten a few questions about, can I get a contact in my location? Is this national? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this is national, y'all. So we are opening up our applications to collaborate with organizations nationwide, and that's outside of the Midwest Regional Office. I have approval from the federal government to place positions throughout the nation. Ellie, so I heard another question you asked was like, can they get a contact at their regional office? Is that what the question is?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can send you that. I'd be happy to. I want to just be completely transparent with you all about that. For you to start your own AmeriCorps program and get positions directly through the federal agency is going to be cumbersome. The technical language and the grant management system that they use are challenging for organizations to work with. Organizations that have hosted us through Housing Action Illinois for years have gone to try to run their own programs, and then they come back to us in a year or two because they didn't realize how challenging it can be to work with them. And I have a decade-long relationship with the federal agency, and I'm willing to, and I'm able to offer you a simplified application process that I'll do the heavy lifting on the federal agency side of things so that you all don't have to, and you can get positions started in the next like 5 months versus starting a whole new relationship with the federal agency and writing a whole new grant for them and then getting that approved and going through all the steps that I'm about to show you how to do. If you all want that, I'm happy to send that to you. A warm introduction, all that good stuff. But I, based on my lived experience, understand that working and collaborating with us is going to be a better bet for you all.
So Willie, I'll just jump in and say that we did look at this possibility a couple of years ago, and it was a bear. So working through you would be much, much better.
Thanks for saying that. All right, I'm going to move on unless you think there's anything else, Ellie.
Go for it.
Great. So when it comes to AmeriCorps positions, there are two types of AmeriCorps Vista positions that are offered. There's what's called the AmeriCorps member and the AmeriCorps summer associate. Here is the breakdown of the key things that you need to understand about them, right? So the member is 12 months full-time, whereas the summer associate's 8 to 10 weeks over the summer, hence the name. They can focus on the same types of projects. And then here with the positions per organization, please see how it says usually no more than 2 for the members or 6 for the summer associates. If you have the funding for it and you have the work that needs to get done, talk with me and we can totally consider increasing the number of either types of positions for your organization. Service type. So the federal agency breaks down the types of work or service that the AmeriCorps members and summer associates can do by using the terms indirect and direct service. So direct service are activities that provide an in-person measurable benefit to an individual, a group, or a community, working directly with people to make change or work that is involved in making that direct change. Whereas indirect service includes activities that build the capacity of an organization to enhance its mission, strategy, skills, and culture, as well as the systems, infrastructure, and human resources in an organization that is fulfilling unmet community needs, right? Capacity building activities help an organization gain greater independence and sustainability. So Then there's the host site fee. Sometimes you might also see it referred to as the project participation fee. That's $5,000 per member and $1,000 per summer associate. I did get confirmation from from HUD that comprehensive housing counseling grant dollars can be used to pay that host site fee for both types of positions. So now it's time to get into the application itself, unless there's any other pressing questions. Fantastic. So, application section breakdown. There are 3 sections, as you can see on your screen, and the first 2 are through a SurveyMonkey, and the last section is a separate Word document. And you can see the basic level information of what we're asking about on the slide in front of you. And I'm going to go into each individual one right now. So, application section 1 is mostly very basic information regarding your organization. However, this is where you will talk about recruitment, and that's important. You'll want to go into as much detail as possible about the resources and ideas you have about spreading the word about your position in your community. Housing Action will collaborate with you to market the position, screen and interview candidates, onboard your AmeriCorps positions. However, we market the program broadly, not for any individual position. So let's take a look. All right, so here is application section 1. And here is a preview of it, because what I recommend you all do, right, is download a preview like you can see on the left-hand side of my screen and gather all of this information that you have about your organization so that when it comes to filling out the SurveyMonkey, you can simply copy paste, right? So organization name, address, contact person, email, phone, and your employee identification number. This should be the main person that we're going to talk with, right? Some organizations may get their executive director, and then they have other staff function in roles that I'll show in a moment. And other times they just use the person that's going to supervise the position to be the primary contact. I leave that up to you. So now we have still section 1. We want to know how many AmeriCorps members or summer associates you're applying for. How many full-time employees at your organization? These questions are simple yes, no. These are things that the AmeriCorps agency requires of organizations that are hosting positions. I don't think any of this will be a challenge for you all, but rather just a matter of making sure to read through and click yes or no. So here's the supervision section, like I was talking about earlier. The primary contact person doesn't have to be who's going to supervise the position. Sometimes it is, though. So we just want to get as much information as we can as possible. One thing I will note too here is, during this remote workplace environment we have nowadays, it's important that you give me a phone number that you'll actually answer, right? Sometimes people have been giving us office numbers, but then they're never in the office. And so then even if I leave a voicemail, they don't get it. So if you give me a cell phone number, I promise I'm not going to text you after work hours, but I need some way to be able to speak to you in case of lapsed communications and emailing or a pressing need. We have 2 separate sections for the supervisors, right? Because again, right, you can say, I want to apply for 4 positions, and maybe one person isn't going to supervise all 4 positions. Here is a brief description for a scenario like that. We want to be able to understand, make sure that you are thinking through what the supervision process will entail if you're going to supervise multiple positions. Here are some straightforward expectations we have of our supervisors. And now we jump into the recruitment part of section 1. Right, as I mentioned earlier, recruitment is one of the most important processes of this program, in that it doesn't really matter how well written your job description is or how potentially potent your theory of change is. If you can't find somebody to do the job, then it's not going to get done. So we take this extremely seriously. Sometimes we have, again, 2 separate things in case separate people will be interviewing for separate positions, or perhaps there are different people that'll be in charge of marketing the position versus actually interviewing and onboarding in the recruitment process. Here are a checklist of methods that we commonly see organizations use to spread the word. And even, if you want to do something other and you want to specify in here, that's great. It would also be great if, if you say you want to do recruitment websites and you're going to do stuff outside of these ones, tell us which ones there are, right? If you have any ideas about websites that might be useful for everybody. So this set of questions kind of speaks to how the AmeriCorps members and summer associates are paid below the federal minimum wage on a biweekly basis for their term of service. And the number one way that you can increase your likelihood of recruiting positions is by offering what we call supplemental benefits. And sometimes those can be in-kind donations, like perhaps you're able to secure affordable housing or at low to no cost for the AmeriCorps member because of partnerships you have with community members. And other times it can be financial, in that you can provide a rental stipend or a gas card reimbursement, something of that nature. This is where you would specify how you're able to supplement the AmeriCorps' monthly stipend that we pay them. And then again, this one's just for, this is something that we had for Chicago metro area groups about a monthly CTA pass. And so you can go ahead and click no. I understand that there might be some people in Chicago that are on this webinar. And so we do have a program requirement that if you are in Chicago, you have to provide a monthly public transportation pass. And so with that, I'm going to bring us back to our slide because we're ready to jump into the next section. I guess I do one final thing on section 1 is the statistic that I have for you is in 2021, we recruited at about 75% rate for all of the positions in Illinois that we were recruiting for. Of the organizations that offered at least $300 a month or more in supplemental benefits, they recruited it at a 100% rate. In 2022, among the organizations that offered $500 or more in supplemental benefits, they recruited at a 150% rate. And you heard me right, 150. They recruited more eligible and desirable candidates than they had positions for. So then I went ahead and created another position for them to onboard another AmeriCorps member. Application section 2. There is no need to get into a whole lot of detail in this section. That's what section 3 is for. Here, we're asking questions to make sure you're not completely off base with your idea for the position, right? We just want to get the big picture, make sure that it makes sense, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty details on the next one. So let me show you what I mean. So the first thing we have is our project outline. I know it looks a little strange that, we say up to 100 to 500 words in here, and then it's such a small text box. But again, that's why you have the preview going on with the Word document that has all of these questions answered, and then you can just copy paste from here into here. The next question gets into, by the end of the year, what do you envision is going to be the result, right? So you're going to, these are the most common types of results that we can see. And you can always put in other if you have other ones that you want to include, but feel free to use this type of language and framework for your answer for 27. Next is something that is extremely important, which is the quantitative impact of these positions. Oftentimes, some organizations will say things to us like, the true impact of an AmeriCorps member is unquantifiable and immeasurable, and that is not appropriate for a federal agency. We also understand that from our organizations that host AmeriCorps members, there's a tendency to be a bit shy or hesitant to share the number that you've shared with us that you've shared with other funders, and just eliminate that hesitancy from your mind. This number that you provide us, we want your pie in the sky number, because if you don't meet it, that's okay, right? If you say I'm going to help 50 affordable housing units become available, developed, or repaired, and you create 40, that's okay, right? We're just looking to set some goals. So every one of your positions should either have a quantifiable impact for 29 or 28, or excuse me, 29 or 30. And then the rest of these are stuff that will basically depend on what you specifically want your position focused on. These should be hard numbers. Don't give me narrative-based submissions. It should be a specific actual number. Question 36 is a question asking how you're going to measure the success of the project. And what we mean by that is like, what are the names of the tools, systems, software that you use, not how do you define creating affordable housing, right? You should write this so that my AmeriCorps leader and Housing Action staff, when they're reviewing the reports of your AmeriCorps member that they submit to us monthly once they start their terms of service, so that we can look at this and be able to check in with them and say, well, you should be able to count that quantifiable measure through this software that your organization mentioned. Last portion of this section is sustainability and impact. Again, check boxes, right? We want you to not spend a whole time reinventing the wheel here. Let us know which one of these most, if, and it's a checklist, so you can check as many as you want, is relevant to your position in your framework. Right? Just click, click, click. And then there's the community empowerment, which we also keep in the same vein. And again, it's click, 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 and you're done. And that's it. That's section 1 and 2. So the nitty-gritty details of section 3. We also call this the AmeriCorps side of things, in that, all of what I just shared with you is, right, basic information, broad strokes. We'll share some of the information about your organization with the federal agency. The following section is what we copy paste and send to them, and they review to approve. So it's made up of a few different portions that I'm going into detail now. The need statement. This is where you substantiate why you need an AmeriCorps member to do this work. There's 2 questions in it that I'll go over in a moment, and you need to cite your sources. back in the old days, right? When you had to write your papers for your academic careers, you have to cite your sources. The key point I want to make here is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Look at what your work plan has. Look at what your other grant writing has in your HUD housing counseling application, right? I'm sure you can pull information from there and answer these questions. If you don't usually write grants, I recommend you ask your development team or whomever at your organizations for a guidance or assistance on this specific need statement portion. Because this portion has given program managers and other staff not familiar with this type of code switching for the work that we do a hard time. With that explanation, let me give you an example. So this is the exact document that you'll be able to receive. This first question for the need statement is talking about your community and the population you're intending to serve, right? You can see here, this group cited the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis information, and they cited Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia information. They have specific information about the communities in Illinois that they're going to serve and what the home ownership rates look like. The credit history and poor or fair credit, right? So you go down. The other question is, sorry, I was getting a little out of breath there, so I need to take some water. This question is saying, what evidence do you have that you're using to be your kind of guidelines for why this is going to succeed, right? And to make this abundantly clear, you all can, more or less cite yourselves. You are experts of your fields and your communities. You can say, we've been piloting this for years and we haven't been able to scale up, and we know with an AmeriCorps member support, we'll be able to scale. That can be your evidence, right? But you do have to cite, you would want to cite your program's success that you've been piloting. Or you can say that we know another organization in a similar community succeeded in doing this and we're going to mimic them. That counts as citing your source. So again, just want to show you a couple of ways that this can look, right? You don't have to cite your source like that group did. You can cite it in the text. This group cited a housing study from DePaul University, which is a college here in Chicago, that went into all the different types of services they provide and the community need for those types of services at their organization. And then they have statistics that show how effective housing counseling can be in fighting poverty and these types of populations. And these statistics show the importance of expanding our housing counseling presence in the South suburbs. Perfect, right? Last one to show you is this one. And again, they bring up COVID in this one. It's now need assistance in understanding their rights, negotiating with landlords, accessing rental and mortgage assistance programs. And it talks about what their cost of housing looked like. The National Low Income Housing Coalition's Out of Reach report is a great resource for this portion. And that's an annual publication that I'm sure you all are familiar with. And again, cite HUD on why housing counseling works, right? And what do you know about your own local clientele, how effective your programming has been thus far? And you've got that portion done. So on to the VISTA assignment descriptions. Here's the big picture, or here's the overview of them. They're made up of 3 sections: the goal of the project, objectives, and member activities. the goal of your project is going to be your big picture elevator pitch. Your objectives are going to be the key projects and benchmarks that AmeriCorps members or summer associates will have to achieve in their term of service to achieve that big picture. And then the member activities are going to be the workflow, day-to-day tasks and responsibilities that are going to build into those objectives. I'm going to walk you through one just for the sake of timeliness. And then we will be sharing these examples with you all after at the conclusion of this webinar. So you'll have all this to help write your own business assignment descriptions. All right, so let's look at this goal of the project. Make sure everyone can see it. Good goals of the projects are made up of a few sentences, right? There's one that says what the organization is. There's one that says what the community need is. There's one that talks about specifically why they need it now. And then there's one that says what the AmeriCorps member will do and how that will help end poverty. That is written right here too. Right? One sentence for a description of the organization, a statement on the community need, explanation of how the VISTA will address that community need and how addressing this community need fights poverty. The key thing here, 750 characters with spaces. That's not 750 words, that's characters with spaces. This should be your consolidated elevator pitch for what you're doing with your AmeriCorps position. And then we get into an objective, right? We like this objective for a few reasons. We really like these verbs, launch and market. There's no assisting, there's no helping. It's, of course, they're going to be doing this in conjunction with staff members, but this is how it should be framed, right? It gets specific to for at least 50 households during the first year, right? I'm sure you all are familiar with the SMART acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timeliness. That's what these should look like. And then we get into the member activities, right? And it's pretty short. Look at it. It's just research and then oversee implementation. And that's good enough for us. And this is how this group consistently wrote it, right? It's great verbs, and then there's a great specific quantitative goal and a when it's going to be done by, right? And then there's what their research should do, how they should get it done, who they're going to work with to help execute the project. So that's how one can look like. I do just want to show you one more that's longer activities like this one. So again, we look at this goal of the project, we like it, right? What does this organization do? What's the community need? What's the VISTA going to do? And then how's this going to fight poverty? Right? So this one is a little bit more traditional in that this one has much more member activities, right? That last one I showed you, not everyone goes as simple as they want to on that activity, on those member activities. This one gets into a lot more detail, right? I'm not going to read the slide in front of you, but I will slowly scroll past it. You know, this one has 5 member activities with one of them having 4 subpoints. You know, and this one, I like this one too, because it's showing they can say, like, we think we're going to be able to increase the percentage by 25%. And then it says what that hard number would be, right? And again, we have a lot more member activities under each objective. So that's what the VISTA assignment descriptions can look like. All right, so then we have our opportunity listings. This is our main recruitment tool. Opportunity listings are what get posted on the AmeriCorps portal. The AmeriCorps, what USA Jobs is to federal employment, is what the AmeriCorps portal is to AmeriCorps positions. So we want to accurately describe your organization position in an ideal way that attracts candidates to apply to the position, makes it stand out on the AmeriCorps portal. And the opportunity listings are comprised of a few different sections. You have your title and two-liner. Think clickbait. That's where you're going to have 10 positions listed out on your search, and you want your position to stand out so they click to see the full program description and member duties, where you can get into all of the information you want people to know about your organization, what you need done, and who you're looking for. So let's keep scrolling down and see some AmeriCorps portal postings. Oh, this one's blank. That's so silly. I must have deleted it on accident. Here we go. So two-liner, it's short, right? It's 200 characters, including spaces. But I like this one, right? Join us to build assets and change lives by addressing housing insecurity through these specific measurements and means. Every single opportunity listing is going to start with this paragraph, where it's going to say your title of your position, the organization, and where you're located. This organization is part of our network, and you're going to receive customized support. And then it goes into who the organization is in more detail. It goes into what the VISTA member is going to do, and it says who their ideal candidate is. When you keep scrolling down, the member duties, these are actually pretty much just rephrased objectives of the assignment description. And to be clear, it is totally okay to pull information from your VISTA assignment description into your opportunity listing. Great. So for the application process submission overview and final slide, when I say submit an application, this is what it means, right? You complete that SurveyMonkey. I'll get notified on my end when that SurveyMonkey is completed. Then you'll email the Section 3 Word document that I just showed you. And then you'll receive an email confirmation from either me or one of my staff members confirming receipt and letting you know when you'll hear back by. Because in the application process, we will, during the month of February, provide you one round of feedback. We usually give about 7 business days to process the feedback and return it to us. We have a very high approval rating, right? I don't want you all to let perfect get in the way of good for this application. One of the things I specialize in is getting an application from a C+ or a B- to an A+ in the eyes of AmeriCorps. So don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. And Ellie, this is where we wanted to stop and do the poll before we jump into the recruitment overview, right?
Yes, and I think there's a couple of questions that I think, let's just jump on those right now before we go into the polls, because they're kind of specific to recruitment. So is there a fee?
A fee for what?
For your service?
My service? I mean, no, it's just the project participation fee and the summer associate fee. If we approve you, there's no additional fee from there. It's flat rate, that's it.
Okay. Are they virtual placements, in person or hybrid? And can a VISTA be a housing counselor if they are limited to indirect service?
You can do any of those. Whatever your organizational policy is what AmeriCorps policy is. I'm just going to jump to the slide for a second. The new remote service policy is that members and summer associates can serve up to full-time remotely as long as they're located in a reasonably commutable distance from your office. And that's defined by you all. So no more California remote workers serving Housing Action Illinois and Chicago, Illinois, but somebody maybe 45 minute drive away from me, I still might I'll be able to approve that because they won't have to come into the office that often. So 45 minutes to an hour every once in a while isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, so that's a great question about the indirect service, and how I've framed it to the federal agency. Obviously, somebody can't provide housing counseling services if they're not certified by the individual certification exam. So if your member passes that certification exam during their term of service, which we will assist them in doing, as I'll explain later on in this presentation, you will be able to let them do housing counseling services as long as it's like you're piloting it. Like their indirect service issue is about displacing staff members. So what they wouldn't want to have happen is you already have a certified housing counselor on staff. And once your VISTA member passes the exam, you then assign the AmeriCorps member the workload that your staff member was doing, so that your staff member can go do new, more important things, right? That would be inappropriate. But if it's you want to start doing new programming like pre-purchase counseling and you want the AmeriCorps member to do that, we would consider piloting new programming in a direct way would be considered you're still indirectly building the capacity of the organization. And I know that may be confusing to hear, but that's a great question. And so I hope that answers it.
Okay, are people recruiting their own VISTA members, or is that a service you provide?
Both, yes, is the answer to that. Let's go to this slide. Here is a breakdown of the responsibilities that Housing Action and the hosting organizations have for recruitment. Again, right, Housing Action Illinois will broadly market the program through in-person and virtual events on the My AmeriCorps portal, on our own website, social media, and newsletters. You, hosting organizations, should do so for your specific positions, right? Go to local in-person events, other external online platforms, because the vast majority of AmeriCorps applicants follow this trajectory where they apply through AmeriCorps or Housing Action Illinois first. We then screen and do first round interviews. The hosting organization does a final round interview. You tell us who you want to offer the position to, and then we handle the formal written offer. But there's also when applications get submitted directly to the hosting organizations. And so then we just inverse the interview process of then the hosting organization would do the first round interview. Housing Action would do a final round interview. And you would tell us that, like, hey, Housing Action, Willie, we really like this person. So if you interview them and you like them, make them an offer right there and then. And then we would do so, right? Because again, when it comes to the offer and paperwork, as you can see on this slide, like, it's your organization and it's your position. You all have the final say on who gets offered that. But we then handle the written offer because AmeriCorps makes things a little bit more complicated than they need to be. And again, that's what we're here for. We're translating and liaising with the federal agencies so that you all don't have to.
Okay, here's a question that I know you're going to be really happy to give the answer to. Are supplemental benefits billable to HUD OHC?
Yeah, they are. I am getting feedback. I'm getting guidance from the federal agent from HUD on what specific line item, because that was a question I got asked and I don't know the answer to because I don't write housing counseling grant funding stuff, but they're going to send that to us and you'll know the exact line item you'll be able to do.
Okay. And you may have answered this earlier on, but is there a minimum salary for the positions?
Yeah. So we do a cost share model. So for every 7 positions, we post, AmeriCorps expects Housing Action to pay the salary of one of those out of pocket. And so then instead of just charging organizations that have 7 positions for one of them, we charge everybody a little amount, and that's where that 5,000 for the full year member and 1,000 for the summer associate go to, right? We collectively handle that payment distribution. The information on the salary and all the other benefits will be provided to you after you submit an application to me and it gets approved. The salary ranges based on your local county's poverty line. That's determined by the federal agency. I can say in Chicago, I believe it's $675 every 2 weeks.
Okay, so there's one more question, but what I'm going to do is launch the first poll so that people can be answering the poll while you're answering the final question I'm going to ask you. All right, so I believe that everybody can see this. Yep, okay, I'm starting to get answers. Okay, so the question is, can we use AmeriCorps members for positions other than in our housing counseling and financial literacy program?
That would be a case-by-case basis. As designed right now, we are limiting the type of focus area for AmeriCorps members and summer associates to our national audience. Again, and so our general thought is like, you should only focus on housing work, right? We don't have the bandwidth to have summer associates working on hunger projects nationwide. The final part of that answer is, if this goes well this year and next year, there is totally a world where we start opening it up to other types of housing work and maybe even other intersectional focus projects, because AmeriCorps allows for a lot of different focus types, and we're piloting a lot of those here in Illinois right now. But just given the scale at which you all seem interested, we want to not bite off more than we can chew.
Okay, so here's the first poll.
Great.
Results.
Awesome. And then do we want to do you mind if we do the next ones too?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And so to wrap that answer up, shoot me an email if you have something else in mind, and maybe we'll consider piloting something else with you if you have a good idea. That part of the reason why we want to keep it to the housing counseling stuff right now is we are highly confident in recruiting these positions efficiently, getting the federal agency's approval, and our capability of training and making sure these members have a successful term of service, so that we can learn the best practices and common challenges with such elegant program design, so that when we do want to break out into more housing focused on a national scale projects, we have those muscles kind of built up to take on the other challenges that we might see.
Okay, we have the second poll up. And we have about not quite half of the participants answering. You'll give it a few more seconds.
Yeah, I think the number was 22 for people that said yes to the last poll. And again, you all, I'm asking these questions so that I can try to start projecting the workflow for my team internally of how many of these applications we're going to receive. We can totally do it in the time frame we have. This is me just trying to get ahead of things a little bit.
So there's the results.
Great. Great.
Okay, next question.
And again, you know, one of the ideas with the summer associate program is we would use, you know, it can be daunting to sign up for a full year of service, but it's less daunting to sign up for a summer of service. And then once we've got them in for the summer, we transition them to the full year position, right? It's one of the best ways to get a sense for you all to interview them to see whether or not they're the real deal. And it's also a chance for the summer associate themselves to see, is a full year of service possible for me? Is it something I can do and want to do? So we highly recommend for every one AmeriCorps member position, you apply for at least one summer associate position, if not more. Because they can get the ball rolling and they do have that specific direct service stuff. So maybe they can do intake for you so that your current housing counseling staff can focus on getting them the services they need.
So I do want to mention, I wanted to mention this earlier, but we did get a comment in the chat box from Rebecca Richardson, who is a former AmeriCorps member who is now a full-time paid housing counselor.
What the heck am I doing talking? She should be on the one who's giving the presentation.
Okay, here's the results of this poll. And I will go to the final question. Oh, sorry about the spelling there. I spelled January wrong.
Hey, no, I actually like that you did that because like, I want to like, again, you all like, do not let perfect get in the way of good enough on this application or with this process. Please, like, and I hope you all extend that same type of grace to me and the like, I misspell things. You know, there are going to be little things here and there. But the broad idea of this is something that everybody that I've talked to at HUD is really excited about. Everybody at AmeriCorps is really excited about. Some of this, you know, I'm bringing on some new staff members on a new staff member on Tuesday, who's an external communications professional, and she's going to wildly enhance our marketing systems. And I think we're really going to be able to deliver a high quality program to you all where you're, you know, getting to choose from 5 to 7 people to interview and offer this position to at your organization.
All right, I'm going to end this one. Here's the results.
Cool.
And this poll also answers one of the questions that was in the Q&A, which is when is the application due?
Yeah, January 27th. Yeah. So, and I would like everyone to try to get it in by then. Again, I am an email, I am a call away. You're going to get my contact information, you know. So
to clarify, AmeriCorps pays the member salary.
yes.
There's just an amount that the organization has to contribute towards the cost of having an AmeriCorps member, but the pay comes from AmeriCorps.
That's correct.
And as an organization, you can sweeten the pot for somebody who might be interested in working at your organization by offering other benefits, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's what that supplemental benefit is, right? So that $5,000 that goes to me is what we use to pay a portion of the cohort. The rest of the cohort is paid from the federal grant. And then we strongly encourage you all to use some of those CHC dollars to sweeten the pot for your specific position. And then you would administer those funds, right? So it'd be like the bi-weekly check comes from Housing Action Illinois, and the monthly rental stipend comes from your organization. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
And
yeah.
go ahead, Willie.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm ready to move on unless we got more
Just
questions.
one quick question. So, well, two quick questions. Would the indirect costs like office space, occupancy, laptop mileage, et cetera, go towards the 5K match? And what's the timeline for the full year position?
No, so no, you all would handle your own mileage reimbursement stuff, like the indirect costs that Housing Action doesn't.
So the $5,000 has got to be a cash match. That's what the question is. It's $5,000 that the organization has to pay.
Yeah, and the organization can use comprehensive housing counseling grant dollars to pay that $5,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's $1,000 for the summer associate.
All right. And then the timeline for the full year position.
All right. Let's see here. Let me scroll ahead. These are all such great questions. Let's see here. Which one makes the most sense to show you? All right. So yeah, I did delete. Okay. So here's the recruitment deadlines and start dates. These are predetermined by the federal agency. So the full year member timeline, so, and the summer for that matter, is you submit your application to me on January 27th. I get you feedback a couple weeks later. You take a week to get that back to me. I look it over. It looks great. I approve it. By the end of February, early March. During March, my team submits it to the federal agency. The federal agency approves it. I have a 100% approval rating from the federal agency over the last 3 years. So if I approve it, they'll approve it. On late March, early April, we'll have our webinar that does the full in-depth recruitment and onboarding processes, the key systems, responsibilities. We'll go into way more detail than I'm gonna go into this one. And then once that happens, your positions can start on any of these dates that you see on your slide. They serve a full year member, serves for 1 full year. Summer associates are 8 to 10 weeks over the summer. So if your full year member starts June 5th, 2023, they end their term of service June 4th, 2024. And ideally, they are past the certification exam. And then on June 5th, 2024, they begin their full-time staff position as a housing counselor at your organization. That being said, August 14th and 28th are the biggest start dates. That's when I want to say 75%, 80% of all the positions that we host start. If you all weren't able to recruit by August 28th, there will be more start dates available through October and December, and we will happily continue recruiting with you. But this is our ideal world. Everybody is in service by August 28th because the rest of the training and support that Housing Action Illinois provides is really around that date. And I'll get into what the recruitment deadlines are when I actually get through this part. So does that answer the question on the timeline? Does anyone have any more specific questions on what like the timeline can look like?
There isn't anything else in the question and answer box about timeline. So go ahead and move ahead.
All right. So I kind of showed this to you already. Here it is again. AmeriCorps came up with this new remote policy on Monday. And so I got this all ready for you all. That's the commutable distance from your office is defined by you. The vaccines aren't mandated by the AmeriCorps federal agency. You can do anything from full remote to full in person. Personally, with my AmeriCorps leaders, which is a specific kind of position that serve directly at Housing Action Illinois, with me to help you all, I've found that fully remote service doesn't work. Over the last 2.5 years, the best AmeriCorps leaders have been the ones that, and when I say the best, they also like the ones that got the most out of it were the ones that came into the office with me 3 days a week for the first 90 days. There's a form that that your AmeriCorps member will have to fill out. If you're going to do more than 1 day a week, you'll get access to that if need be. Again, breakdown of the responsibilities. Again, it's, Housing Action Illinois does all the broad stuff. We're gonna be in person and virtually spreading the good word about the Housing Action AmeriCorps network and all of the opportunities. You all are going out in your own community, spreading the word about your specific positions. Together, we interview. More often than not, Housing Action Illinois is doing the first round interview, then you're doing the final round interview. Our interview is like making sure they understand who Housing Action Illinois is, what AmeriCorps is, evaluating their motivation and experience to identify green, yellow, and red flags for their likelihood of succeeding and completing a term of service. Your interview is, do they have the technical skills? Do they have relevant interests to your specific positions? Are they going to be a good cultural and a good communication culture and supervisory style for you as the supervisor? And then the benefits of your specific position, right? What supplemental benefits are you offering? What trainings are you going to send them to? So on and so forth. And then when it comes to offering the offer, like, you have the final say. You can, if you like the person, you can, orally offer the position to them at the conclusion of the interview, but Housing Action handles the written offer, collecting and submitting the AmeriCorps paperwork, and then you all are responsible for the on-site orientation plan, which I'll go into later, and then we're both responsible for checking in with the applicant between that recruitment deadline and start date to make sure things are going according to plan. I showed you this, and I'm not going to go over it again unless you have questions about it. So, right, this is when they submit to Housing Action Illinois first, or AmeriCorps first, and this is when they submit to you first. And really the only difference is who does the first and final round interview. Showed you these start dates and deadlines. Here's a definition of these start dates and deadlines. That start date is the first date in person or remotely in their position. These are immovable. They must be followed. There are certain things that must be completed on the first day. So there's no, oh, well, I'm actually moving and I need to start on June 6th for a summer associate position. No, you're starting on June 5th. There are things you have to get done by the federal agency's rules. Recruitment deadline. This is real important, y'all. This is the day that Housing Action can guarantee we can process everything we need to secure that start date with relevant paperwork and a sufficient application on the My AmeriCorps portal. This is not when you give me a call at 4 p.m. on the day saying, hey, I just found this person. Can you interview them and offer them the position, right? This is when all the interviews have been done. They've accepted the offer. We've done all the paperwork and we're just notifying the federal agency. So to secure a start date by that relevant recruitment deadline, they have to have a satisfactory AmeriCorps portal application. And so this is important in case like the person sends you a resume and a cover letter, and that's what we use to interview the person. And then when we provide the offer, we would give them a guide on how to complete this. That on-site orientation plan, that's what you create that outlines the training and orientation your member and summer associates will receive in their first month of service at your organization. You're responsible for developing and implementing the plan. However, Housing Action will give you so many templates and best practices to make one to customize it for yourself. Yeah, I mean, if your member or summer associate's going to have outside employment or teleserve or work remotely for a lot of the program, then just submit some simple forms. And for summer associates, it's important to confirm the specific start and end date, because they can't serve past the end of August. So, and we want to make sure we get the most out of them for that 8 to 10 weeks. So here's some interviewing best practices. Again, it's got to be, we have to be prompt and quick, and it has to be one final round interview, right? We got beat out this past year because there are organizations that are hosting directly through the federal agency, or so they only have themselves to work with. Whereas we have Housing Action Illinois and you all as organizations, and so they're able to interview quicker. So when you designate who your recruiter is going to be, that person has to be willing to check in with Housing Action Illinois once or twice a week, very briefly, and schedule interviews quickly. Again, you do not have one interview with the recruiter and then an interview with the supervisor and then an interview with your executive director. It is one final round interview. We like asking questions that don't have clear or absolute answers. So for example, for my AmeriCorps leader position, I asked, would you rather question. So would you rather work with an organization that always gets their reports done on time, but they're poorly completed, or an organization that always needs an extension, but the reports are excellently completed, right? The thinking is everybody has Google and they can research what specific kind of questions you're asking for if they're like closed-ended or standardized cliched questions. But if you ask would you rather questions or questions that don't have clear and absolute answers, they'll have to kind of think on their feet, and they might actually show you who they are versus what they're trying to project themselves to be to you all. And that's what we want to figure out in interviews. Again, for summer associates, it's crucial to understand what their plans are for after service. So that one, you may identify people that can become members, but then two, if they're going back to school and they have to go to school on the 15th, then we know we can't have them serve until the 21st because they're leaving. And if a summer associate kind of doesn't finish when they say they're going to finish, they may forfeit their end service benefit. So that's something that we'll all be on top of, but it's something that we all have to be on top of, not just Housing Action. On to onboarding. And so that's defined for us as like recruitment is when, and onboarding is once the position has been formally accepted, we go into onboarding. So there's some pre-start date steps, real simple stuff here. Just some one webinar and a few, or actually 2 webinars and online coursework through AmeriCorps. There's some paperwork on the portal. Optional is getting the Housing Action Illinois steps completed, which you can see here on the first day and first week. There is a Housing Action webinar, and then there's an AmeriCorps webinar on the first day. During the AmeriCorps webinar is when they'll take their oath of service, and this is why it's crucial for them to be present in this oath of service, or on their first day of service, because the oath is what they'll have to complete. It's the same oath that every federal employee or volunteer takes, besides for the president and the vice president. Their oaths are a little different. And then during the first week, some pretty standard stuff, y'all, right? It's submitting payroll documents, emergency contact forms. You're going to be working on the community. You'll be working on your orientation with them. You'll be going over a work plan using the VISTA assignment description. And you may need to make edits to the VISTA assignment description. One thing that's really important about understanding that is those are living documents, right? At this point, if your position is starting in August 28th, that means you submitted your application to me at the end of January. So that's almost 8 months, 7 months of time lapse. And that can be an eternity in nonprofit planning. It's okay if you make edits, but you just need to send them to me before you assign them to your AmeriCorps member. And then we generate these memorandum of understandings for you all to sign that are documents that will be helpful to keep each other accountable throughout the term of service. Here's some recommendations we have. Just have one-on-ones with your AmeriCorps member and the summer associates on the first day. schedule time for payroll documents and other relevant paperwork. This is going to be a lot of their first nonprofit office jobs, so they're going to need a little bit more guidance than a traditional employee would. And then, you know, again, they're making below the federal minimum wage on a biweekly basis. Share with them what are some affordable or low-cost shops, activities to do in your community. And then for the first week, schedule one-on-ones with as many staff members and other relevant stakeholders to the project that you have in mind for them. Communicate upcoming holidays, what your leave policy is, and any planned time off you or they have from there. And then it's always important to share what the performance review process is. And those are the performance reviews we require as an organization. Moving right on through the training overview, this is just one slide. There is going to be training provided by Housing Action Illinois and AmeriCorps that is mandatory. We've got our individual certification exam study groups that'll be coordinated through Wanda Collins and David Young here at Housing Action. That's going to go throughout the year. As we know, it's challenging to pass the exam, so some people have to take it twice, so maybe they want to study twice. We'll then have a virtual retreat, which will be on the Fridays in September. That one's going to be focused on getting them geared up to be successful in their terms of service, certain things like conflict resolution, trending housing topics, other like nonprofit professional things that are helpful. The Housing Matters Conference is going to be in person in late October. We will also write the grant so that their travel, lodging, meals will all be paid for by Housing Action Illinois for that Housing Matters Conference. Won't have to come out of your own pocket. And then we'll have our spring retreat, which again will be virtual on the Fridays, but in April. And that training is focused on getting them geared up to be successful after their terms of service. This is how to write resumes. This is how to interview well. This is how to network. This is how to be a successful professional after they finish their year, which should theoretically be pretty simple because they're going to be offered positions by your organizations to become housing counselors. And if they're not, then we can maybe get them into one of the other organizations nationwide that are looking for them. And then AmeriCorps has their own stuff. There's some virtual coursework that I mentioned that has to be done during the first month. They host monthly webinars that aren't mandatory, but they're pretty good, and AmeriCorps members should attend them. Lastly, there is the Vista Campus, which is a database of recorded trainings and materials. Housing Action is actually developing our own version of that, but I don't want to go into much more detail than that until we have it completed. All right, we're so close to done. Here's a brief overview of what the reporting looks like. There's some monthly stuff. Twice a year, they'll have to send us narratives talking about what they've done, so we can tell the federal agency what they've done. And then Housing Action Illinois will schedule check-ins on a monthly basis about those timesheets and progress reports. And then once a year, we'll do a virtual site visit, which is basically like a check-in for the staff and the AmeriCorps members, usually conducted within the first 90 days, if not the first 120. Some best practices for supervising is keeping weekly one-on-ones going, and then maybe after the first 90 days, you can move it to bi-weekly or as needed. We want to be thinking about what they're doing after their term of service from the very get-go, so that we can make sure their professional development plans are aligned with making them succeed on where they want to be. This is one for your staff members too, but thank them personally and try to recognize them publicly, whether that's in front of other staff members or stakeholders or clientele. They're, again, getting paid below the federal minimum wage, doing really serious work, and there's no way that you can thank them enough to do that, or overthank them, I should say. Before the position starts, you should explain to your other staff members what these positions are doing, because they are fairly unique. They're not interns, they're not assistants, they're not your paperwork clerks, they are AmeriCorps Vistas. And then use that Vista assignment description. We're going to put a lot of work into it. That's that, portion of the section 3 that we're going to put a lot of work into. Use it. It's a tool that can be used in the recruitment and the interviewing, the supervising, the training, the holding each other accountable parts of this program. Use it, don't lose it. Common challenges for the AmeriCorps members is getting payroll set up on time. Again, it's their first office jobs. They don't understand the importance of that. We all need to help them with it. And then there's poor reporting. I mean, the summer alone goes by so quick. But even for the full year too, right? Like the way that we as nonprofit professionals have to communicate to funders is kind of like a different language than English. So it's just code switching, and we need to help them learn how to do that. Again, they're earning below the federal minimum wage. It's rough out there. Rent's not cheap. Groceries aren't cheap. Nothing's cheap. They're making so little money. Understand when they're voicing concerns about it, you don't have to, start paying them more money immediately, but providing a comprehensive list of those low to no cost activities in grocery stores, checking in with them for the first few months to discuss the challenges they're facing with making so little money. Just don't overlook that or pay no attention to that challenge because it's serious. And again, I mentioned changes to the VISTA assignment description. It's okay if you make changes, you just need to send them to me to get approved first. And with that, it's time. Here's my contact information, and you can, I can stay on and do a Q&A. I don't know if NHRC wants to close it out right away, but that's what I've got.
I'll just throw in there very quickly, Willie. Somebody was asking about the type of people who become VISTA members. For example, are they mostly college students, or is it more diverse background? So just really quickly, if you could say something about that.
Yeah, sure. Like the majority, like I think, the majority is probably college student age folks. But what's really exciting is, every year we always have a lot of mixed, like different age groups, and kind of lived experience backgrounds. What's really exciting this year is HUD and AmeriCorps came up with a new rule that people that are receiving federal housing benefits, like through Section 8, or whether that's stipends or units, the AmeriCorps salary doesn't count as income for the purposes of their federal housing subsidy. So that's going to open up the recruitment pool to a lot of people that we haven't had before, and we're really excited. We're partnering with some national groups to spread the word, and we'd be happy to partner with you all individually to get in touch with your specific housing authorities to recruit. This past year, we were actually able to recruit 3 positions on a last minute notification of this new rule. And so we think with a strategic outreach plan, we'll be able to recruit a lot of people through this new recruitment pool. But then there's always people that are like, their spouse moved because they got a great new job, and so they aren't necessarily in it for the money, they're in it for the relationships and the experience. There's also people that are kind of on the retiring demographic, and they don't want to fully retire yet, so they want to keep their hands busy, and AmeriCorps turns out to be a great option for them. And those alternative, maybe let's call them non-traditional backgrounds make up like 30% of each cohort. So it's definitely not all young, fresh out of college people.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Willie. And we're going to hand it over to, go ahead, Bruce.
Just Willie, I have one more question for you. There used to be a college tuition benefit.
There is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just talking about what they get paid on a biweekly basis. At the end of their term of service, there is something called the Siegel Education Award, which is currently valued at $6,895. And so that's federal funds that they can use to either pay off student loans or pay for future tuition costs. And there's certain universities, colleges, and whatnot that will match it. There's even at Illinois State University's Community and Economic Development Program, they'll give you a full ride if you have 2 Siegel Education Awards. So.
Really great.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. Very impressive program, and let's hope we get a lot of applications out of this. I think it's a great compliment to what you all do, what everybody's doing. Great. I'm going to move us out quickly. So keep in mind the national conference coming up the 27th and 28th of March. You'll see more about that hopefully by next week, and how to register and all those pieces. So quick reminder about joining NHRC if you're not already a member, and renewal for groups that haven't renewed, though we've really picked up our renewals this year, so that's helpful. So we have a substantial discount on the First American, I'm sorry, the CoreLogic Credco credit reports. They are, I know that they're going up in price a great deal, and ours is tri-merge is now is $20 and some change, and for a single for an individual, and and there's other it's a more complicated pricing structure. So if you're not pulling every bureau, you can choose to do it however you want to do it. Though we did look into this question about should you skip doing all 3 bureaus to save money, and kind of the message that we got back from that was no. There are institutions that don't contribute to all 3 bureaus. It turns out to be smaller credit unions, smaller banks, rural banks, and it's just a cost effectiveness piece. So capturing all 3 is valuable, and we should just continue doing it. But we had a healthy discussion about it. Appreciate everybody who chimed in. We also have the Savvy program, which is to help people with their student loans. It's a great program. A fair amount of it is free, but if you want the year-to-year service, we have a deep discount for that as well. So please please contact Ebony to do membership renewals. We are kind of moving rapidly forward. Let me highlight one more quick thing for you, which is we have 2 really good sessions coming up in the following weeks. One is on the what's the latest in credit and credit technologies. There's a lot of good information in this. This is kind of a little bit more of the cutting edge of the work that you do, and we bring in lots of experts. This is Ellie's really worked hard on this to bring together quite a team of people. We'll also have CoreLogic Credco on, but plenty of other organizations that are doing interesting things that will be, I think, helpful to everybody's work who works in credit. And then we are going to do the last week of the month, we're going to do a session on domestic violence. This is actually an issue that is actually quite prevalent in populations that we work with. Well, it's actually prevalent in all populations, but it's an open introduction to what the role might be for housing counselors, and potentially we have our friend CCCS of MD of CCCS MD, which is working in Maryland on this program, and they are doing very innovative work. It's very interesting, has high value for the constituencies we work with and other agencies that work in this field. We kind of fit into the puzzle there. I know there's been some discussion on HUD. We'll do some discussion on this issue. We are very, we just think that this is an important part of our work, and that you and your staff should be aware about it. This is kind of an intro into what a potential model might look like, but I think it'll be helpful to anybody, whether you just choose to get into the field or not. So with that, we'll have plenty more coming up in the future. That's what we do. Hope to see you at our conference, and thanks everybody for what I thought was a really terrific session. Great.